Hi guys, we're back. Thanks again for watching and all the comments and all the messages I've gotten that say, great job, doing good. Okay, so today, let's see. It's going to be the hair. It's going to be the shirt. What's going to bug me today for this video? So I can see myself. Those of you haven't figured that out yet. And so looking at myself while I'm filming is making me go, yeah, a little bit. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I've had several people sharing the videos, and I have said before, please do consider doing that. If you find any value in these videos or in the message here, please share it. That is the mission, to try to get the word to people, to help people know that they can trust in God, they can trust in Jesus Christ, and they can feel secure in looking more into Him and choosing Him, and that sort of thing. If there's anybody that you would like to share this with specifically, or if there's anybody that you want to have talk to me, see if I can help them, please pass on my name, my contact information. I would love to chat with them, see if I can answer any questions they may have as well. So today we're still on the resurrection as we're coming up on Easter. I do have a quick little promo thing coming up this week as well that advertises what we're going to be covering after this one. I filmed it quickly at the Tellus Museum with a big giant dinosaur skeleton behind me. We're going to be talking a little bit about creation and some of the things that some people say discounts the Bible or disputes the Bible, and I'm going to show how it doesn't. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to say, oh, that exists, so the Bible can't be true, because that's just not true. And I'm going to show how that's what we're covering after the resurrection. And then lastly, next week as we come up to Easter, I do want to tell you that I'm going to do a special filming the morning of, do it like a sunrise service sort of thing for myself. I'll be filming and posting on Easter morning. I'm sure you all will be busy rushing around, getting all dressed up, prettified and such, and possibly even hunting an Easter egg or two. Maybe you might have time. But it will be posted then Easter morning for you guys to check out. It's just the finalization of all this, where we've come from and how we got to here and what was the reason behind it. So today we're going to be talking about some dating of the New Testament, some reason why we can believe this, because I hear this quite frequently in the videos I watch, in the debates I see, in the lectures and stuff I see at different colleges. A lot of college students are saying, well, the Bible was written a couple hundred years after Jesus, so how can we trust it? And that is a total inaccuracy. And so we're going to cover that today. The story that's basically told is that Constantine became a Christian in 313 for political power and to control Rome, because the Christians were in charge now in 300 AD. And he held the Council of Nicaea. And at the Council of Nicaea, they decided what goes in the Bible and what stays out of the Bible. And they basically decided what they wanted the Bible to say. And then Athanasius in 367 AD published the list of this what is in the Bible, and this is the list of books in the Bible, after they had edited out what they wanted to go. Well, that is just not true. First, they had some criteria. One, it had to be old enough, meaning it was close to the actual event, 30 AD. Had to be written by an apostle or someone who was close to an apostle, like, say, Mark writing for Peter. Or also it had to be that it had been universally accepted. Pretty much the early church around 100 AD was already accepting these as gospel and truth and historical writings of what happened with Jesus. And the letters that were written by Paul and stuff, they had to have been using them for that reason as well. And so those things, those are some of the things they had to use. I had a couple other things, but they figured it out. But those are the main things here that, to me, apply to today. So let's sort of cover a little bit of that. First off, for Constantine to turn to Christianity in 313 AD because the Christians had power is absolutely, what's my favorite word? Ludicrous. Because in 303 AD, just 10 years before Constantine became emperor, Emperor Diocletian had ordered Christians to sacrifice to pagan gods. If they didn't, they were put to death. And also, they were told to turn in all biblical texts, and those suckers were burned. so it's like, you can't say that that there was any political power to be a Christian in 313 AD, just 10 years after they were still killing Christians for being Christians. So that's a silly notion again. So, but then in 313 AD, Constantine did become emperor, and he issued the Edict of Milan, which basically made Christianity legal. He didn't say it's the official church religion or Rome religion. He said it was legal. It was allowed. And that punishing Christians, putting them to death for being Christians, was no longer allowed. Now, he didn't become a Christian immediately. But once again, he wasn't doing this for political power. And we're going to cover a little bit of that illogical notion of that in just a minute. Then he also held the Council of Nicaea in 325. Its purpose had nothing to do with a list of the Bible, had nothing to do with what goes in the Bible. What it was meeting for was because there was a man named Arian, yes. And there was a belief they were called Arianism. Arianism was basically saying that Jesus was not God, that he was a human man, that God's Spirit came into, or the Christ Spirit came into. And that's not what the New Testament, any of the writings had suggested at all. Jesus himself said, "I am God." Me and him are the same. I was there when he created the world, everything. So they were disputing that in Nicaea. It was pretty much unanimous that was the decision. The dude who came up with the idea was kicked out. Gotta do something here. My computer screen's going to be reading from it in a minute, so if you see the light dim, it's because the computer screen is going to sleep. But I got to read from it in a second. I want to keep it up here where I can see it. It's a lengthy piece. I don't want to rewrite in my notes here just for talking. So they did talk about there's a list of up 20 other things, like when should Easter be celebrated and things like that. That was part of the thing, but nothing about what books should be in the Bible. That was not there. Later on, somebody did talk about some things and said at Nicaea we were talking about this, and he listed things, but he was just saying what they referenced in the Bible, what they were talking about when they were talking about what verses they referenced, but he wasn't saying this was our official list we made from Nicaea. And then in 364 AD, the Council of Laodicea met, and yes, they did discuss the list of what goes in the Bible. In 367 AD, Athanasius did publish what's the list of what was in the New Testament. But they didn't decide then, we like this, we don't like that, we're going to cut this out, cut this in. Because this list had already been going on for some time, they were just making it sort of okay, we're going to agree on these. Nothing else in, this is what's out, this is in. And here's how we know. Working backwards from that point, 320 AD, Eusebius, he was the first church historian, he lists in his list of what's in the Bible, he lists all of everything we have listed in the New Testament, every book. But he did say that these were disputed. There were disputes over James, 2 Peter, 2nd and 3rd John, and Jude. He still lists them. He said there was still some discussion and dispute as to whether they were authoritative, but still listed. Long before Athanasius, about 47 years actually before Athanasius. Before that, 250 AD, Origen, one of the early Christian church fathers, he wrote, let's see, where was it? I thought I had it on my screen here. I didn't have it on my screen, and yay, so I scrolled it down too far. Origen writes something. What did he write? Let's see what he wrote. There we go. He wrote the following. I'm just going to read it. But when our Lord Jesus Christ comes, whose rival that prior son of none designated, he sends priests, his apostles, bearing trumpets, hammered thin, the magnificent and heavenly instruction of proclamation. Here's the trumpet players. Okay. Matthew first sounded the priestly trumpet in his gospel. Mark also. Luke and John each played their own priestly trumpets. Even Peter cries out with trumpets in 2 of his epistles, Peter 1, Peter 2. Also James and Jude. In addition, John also sounds a trumpet through his epistles, and Luke, as he describes the Acts of the Apostles. So Luke wrote Luke and the Acts of the Apostles. And now that last one comes, the one who said, I think God displays us apostles last. And in 14 of his epistles, meaning Paul, thundering with trumpets, he cast down the walls of Jericho and all devices of idolatry and dogmas of philosophers, all the way to the foundations. So he's basically listing the New Testament books there. Some people say that this was just written later on. He did not necessarily list Revelations there, so that was possibly left out. Let's see if I can get back down. Some people say he didn't necessarily write that, but there is another writing of his in a separate book. He writes this. He writes, Isaac therefore digs all new wells. Nay, rather Isaac's servants dig them, meaning new scripture, new studies, and you'll see why I say that. Isaac's servants are Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. His servants are Peter, James, Jude. The Apostle Paul is his servants. These all dig the wells of the New Testament. So he basically lists all the writers of the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Peter, James, Jude, and Paul. That's all of them. So he basically then is considering those writers as authoritative as the New Testament authors. So this is in 250 AD. Then we go even earlier to 180 AD. Another earlier church father, Irenaeus, he wrote a list that only excludes the following. He excluded Philemon, 2 Peter, 3 John, Jude. He did list Revelation in his list, but he just left out Philemon, 2 Peter, 3 John, and Jude. Those are some of the ones that we said earlier that there was dispute on those. So they were already listing these things. We have what is called the Muratorian Fragment that was dated back to 180 AD. It's named after the discoverer, Ludovico. I didn't get that one right. Antonio Muratori. His canonical list is dating to the latter part of the 2nd century, 180 AD. It also confirms the core group. He includes all the books we know of except 1 Peter, 2 Peter, and 3 John. So those things that we're still sort of saying, these are sort of in dispute. But that's all the way to 180 AD, basically listing all of them already. So if they say Athanasius made the list first, it'd be like me saying, "Hey guys, I've written a new song. It's called Jailhouse Rock, and it's an awesome song." And you say, "Wait. There's another guy who did that song. I think his name was Elvis Presley." And I can say, "Well, yeah." So what I could do is only say, "Well, I'm doing my rendition of the song." So basically, that was Athanasius. He was just giving his list based on somebody else's already listing. So he didn't create the list. He didn't even claim to create the list. It's just historians who are skeptics today want to say, see, it wasn't even put together until 367 AD, so it can't be trusted. I've already clocked you all the way back up to 180 AD just for the list of the books, just to get all a closer, almost complete list in 180 AD, meaning, of course, they had to have come before that. This was just by the time somebody started saying, you know what, I think this one, and I think this one, and I think this one. These are the ones we're referencing. They should be going together. These early church fathers were referencing these books from the late 1st, early 2nd century. But let's talk about Constantine for a second. It's not very likely that he did this for political power, like I said. I'm not sure if you guys remember a guy named Julius Caesar. He was killed by the Roman Senate, stabbed to death in public there in the Senate. So Romans kind of have a history of going, if we don't like you, I don't care if you are the leader, we're going to stab you. We're going to go stabby, and you're dead. You know, they don't care about going to jail, jailhouse rock or not. They're going to stab you rather than they're stabbing you. So they didn't care, publicly doing these things. So for Constantine to step up 10 years after Diocletian is saying we should kill Christians and burn their books, he steps up and says, you're going to now worship Christ. This guy you were killing people about, he's actually legit. We're no longer going to worship all the gods you and your fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers, whatever, have been worshiping. We're going to toss those out and you got to do this. That's not very smart. So if he did it for political power, Why would he gain political power from that? Also, he's risking losing all power and his life had he done so. So I really think that you got to say that it sounds a little bit like Constantine's conversion was legit and not just political power. You got to at least say that there's some strong evidence of that. So let's talk about some early date. Let's see if I can get this back up there. Some early dating things that we can see that let us know that the four Gospels were written way back there. First off, we know the date of the crucifixion is around 30 A.D. Okay, so of course everything is coming after that. And we also know that in 70 A.D., Rome destroyed the Jewish temple. And that's not mentioned anywhere in the New Testament. Remember, the New Testament was written by mostly Jews. And they were writing about a continuation of the Jewish religion and just an adaptation, a change to what was being taught by saying, hey, look, the Messiah did come. Here he was. And he stood in this temple and said, you'll destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll rise it again. And of course, after the fact, we're able to say he was talking about destroying his body and he would rise it again. But a lot of people thought he was talking about that temple. So odd that it was never mentioned that in 70 AD that was destroyed if the writings were written after 70 AD. So historians say had to be before. It's kind of like, and I've said this before, if I were writing a history of New York and I made no mention of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, then clearly you could assume that my history is probably written before the 9/11 attacks. Same thing here. James, a half-brother of Jesus, I mentioned before, was stoned to death around 62 A.D. This is a historical fact by high priest Annas. This is referenced by Josephus, placing that death between the two Roman procurators, Festus and Albinus, which puts us around 62 A.D. So we know that those are historic. When people are writing history, they reference the rulers, they reference the wars, they reference the time of things like that, so you can identify the event and when it was written. Josephus was not a Christian, he was a Jewish historian, and he references this and puts it around 62 A.D. After the death of Festus, Nero appointed Albinus as the next procurator. So because of that happening then, he was appointed high priest by Herod Agrippa. Okay, so we know when Herod Agrippa was there because he's the guy that they brought Jesus to, who said, because Herod was basically considered by the Romans the king of the Jews. He wasn't considered that. He was allowed to be that. So the Jews would feel comfortable that maybe they have a king, even though they didn't really have a king. But Herod was King Herod, as you may have heard in the Easter story many, many times. Nero's extreme persecutions began around 60 A.D., and that's not really referenced in the Bible. They talk about persecutions a little bit, but they didn't really talk about how extreme it was. You would think, possibly at least, you would think that they would talk about the extreme nature of Nero and his persecutions, wrapping Christians in animal skins and putting them out in the Colosseum for lions and dogs to chase and hunt down and eat in front of people, cheering on the animals, or tying them to stakes and setting them on fire to light his garden at night for his garden parties he had in his yard at night, burning Christians for lights. Those things were pretty messed up, and they didn't really reference those. That's not proof, but it's some definitely strong circumstantial evidence. We know that Paul was martyred during Nero's reign between 64 and 68 A.D. Same with Peter, between 64 and 68 A.D. We know these things. So that puts at least everybody before 64. Luke wrote the book of Luke, and then after that continued to the book of Acts. And in the book of Acts, it appears that Peter is still alive in the stories as he's describing them. So, meaning Luke had to be written, but Acts had to be written before 64 A.D., meaning Luke had to be written before that because Luke was written before Acts. Paul, in his writing, references all four Gospels, and scholars on both sides agree that 1 Corinthians was written somewhere around 52 to 53 A.D. because of when he was incarcerated by different Roman rulers and leaders and when they were reigning. So that puts those things before 52 A.D. Luke, who Paul references, we've already said, he says in his that he took time and he made sure he interviewed many eyewitnesses to make sure that his information was correct, exactly as right as possible together. So you're assuming he took a little bit of time. So if he's referenced in 52 AD by Paul, it had to be prior to 52 AD, and obviously he took a little time to write it, so who knows how long that was. But then also, Matthew, Mark were written before Luke, so they're even closer to 30 AD. So now to say that the first Gospels are written within 10, 15, 20 years tops after the crucifixion, that's a fair call. When people say, I was written 200 years, 300 years later, that's not a fair call at all. It's not an accurate call, not an accurate interpretation of the facts at all. If somebody says, well, 20 years, that's a long time. Not if you study history. If you're going to study history and you're going to discount everything not read within 20 years of the event, you're going to throw out all of ancient history, and I mean all of ancient history. Nothing goes that close. Nothing goes as close as the resurrection and the crucifixion. Nothing at all goes that close. Everything is hundreds of years after the event. Nothing is that close. This is historical fact, not just my belief, not just what I would hope it would be, not just what Christians say, well, maybe it's this way. These are historical facts, and they get twisted every year around Easter, and they're not that way. So that's all I'm going to say for today. I hope you enjoy this. Watch coming up for the promo for next season of the Wicked Man Ministries, and of course the special Easter thing coming up. I do think there'll be one more next week before Easter, but other than that, we're coming up on Easter pretty quick. So this is the Wicked Man who's left the building. The Wicked Man has left the building. That's the best I'm going to do, and I'm going to... Bye. Thank you very much.